All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to completely decode Carl Jung's fascinating theories of the human psyche. We're embarking on a journey to uncover the hidden, unseen forces that are literally driving our everyday actions. So if you've ever felt like you aren't entirely the one steering the ship of your own mind, well, you're absolutely in the right place. Let's get into it.
Okay, so picture this. It's a highly relatable experience. You're reading a book, and suddenly your attention is just hijacked by a totally random memory. Maybe it's something that happened yesterday, or maybe it's from years ago. This is actually our entry point into understanding how the unconscious actively interrupts our daily conscious lives. To Jung, this wasn't just some random brain glitch. It was a direct transmission from the much deeper layers of your mind.
Here's our map of the psyche for today. First, the personal unconscious. Second, the collective unconscious. Third, archetypes. Fourth, the shadow. Fifth, projection. And finally, a psyche map word association exercise.
Starting off with Section 1, Personal Unconscious and Complexes. We're going to begin right at the surface level with the personal unconscious and those hidden emotional knots buried within it. Now, what's really fascinating here is how Jung explicitly broke away from his mentor, Sigmund Freud. You see, Freud viewed our underlying drive, the libido, as purely sexual energy. But Jung, he looked at it totally differently. He saw the libido not just as sexual, but as a broad, generalized, and expansive life force that fuels literally all of our psychological activities.
To understand how this life force gets trapped, Jung described the personal unconscious. Honestly, just think of it like a massive mental filing cabinet. This is the destination for materials that were once conscious, but have been forgotten or repressed. Why? Usually because they were either too mundane and ordinary, or just way too uncomfortable to deal with on a daily basis.
And right inside this filing cabinet, we find what Jung called complexes. A complex is essentially an emotional knot. It's a core pattern of suppressed memories and desires organized around one single theme. Take a power complex, for example. This might drive someone who secretly feels powerless to aggressively cut off a nicer car in traffic. They don't consciously know why they're hitting the gas to block that car. That hidden complex is literally doing the driving for them.
Section 2, Collective Unconscious, Ancient Heritage.
So, beneath our personal memories and, our daily traffic squabbles, lies a much deeper, shared psychological ocean. And this brings us to the most controversial, yet arguably the most profound part of Jung's entire theory, the collective unconscious. Jung argued that just as we inherit physical traits, we inherit a shared reservoir of human and even pre-human ancestral experiences. It's a psychological heritage basically passed down to every single new generation. Now, to be absolutely clear, we don't inherit direct, specific memories from our ancestors. It's not like that. Instead, we inherit the underlying potential to experience universal things. This explains why an innate fear of the dark, or a fear of snakes, is just wired into us from birth. It's also why ancient, completely disconnected cultures, like indigenous peoples in the Americas and Aboriginal peoples in Australia, all independently developed identical cultural concepts, like the wise old man or the mother figure.
Section 3, Archetypes, Mask, and Gender.
Let's see how all of this builds into the universal cast of characters living inside us. These ancient, repeating experiences crystallize in our minds as archetypes. They manifest constantly in our dreams, our myths, and our fantasies. While there are tons of them, the hero, the mother, the child, Jung identified a few that have the absolute most dominant influence on our personality: the persona, the anima and animus, the shadow, and the self.
Let's look at the persona first. The word originally referred to the literal masks worn by stage actors. For us, it's the social mask we wear to succeed in society. And hey, it's necessary. We need a persona to navigate school and work. But here's the trap: persona inflation. If an athlete or a doctor identifies so completely with their job that they believe they are only the mask, well, they completely lose their true identity if that role is ever taken away. Deeper still are the anima and animus. Jung theorized that humans are biologically and psychologically dual-natured. Because our ancestors lived together for millennia, we actually harbor the psychological traits of the opposite sex. The anima represents feminine traits needing expression in men, like allowing oneself to cry or feel deeply. The animus represents masculine traits in women, like asserting strict logic. Jung insisted that for true psychological health, both of these sides absolutely must be expressed. And this brilliantly illustrates the divide between early psychoanalysts. Looking objectively at the historical sources, Freud categorized non-traditional sexuality strictly as a psychological inversion, basically an illness to be treated.
Jung, on the other hand, looked at it through a completely different lens. He analyzed it simply as a shift in the balance of these internal anima and animus energies within the psyche, completely removing that stigmatizing label of inversion.
Section 4. The darkest archetype, the shadow.
Now we descend to the deepest, most primitive archetype of all, the one Jung called ominous and mysterious, the shadow. It houses literally everything we deny about ourselves. It's the container for our most primitive animalistic instincts. Our ego actively represses these urges because society deems them immoral or just totally unacceptable. We have to suppress the shadow just enough to be considered civilized.
But there's a really profound quote from the source material that highlights a massive paradox. The shadow isn't just a source of evil, it is the absolute source of our vitality, passion, and creativity. If our ego completely blocks the shadow, our lives become incredibly dull, lifeless, and boring. Even worse, complete repression turns the shadow into a ticking time bomb, just waiting for a moment of weakness to explode into our conscious lives.
Section 5. Projection. Seeing ourselves in others.
So, how do we actually know when our repressed shadow is secretly acting up in our daily lives? Think about this for a second. Have you ever felt a sudden, burning hatred for a coworker? Or maybe an immediate, inexplicable infatuation with someone you've literally just met? When our ego is too arrogant or terrified to face its own shadow, it takes those hidden flaws or even hidden talents and unknowingly throws them onto other people.
This is the unconscious mechanism of projection. If you are intensely triggered by someone else's behavior, Jung tells us to look inward. Often, you aren't actually reacting to them, you're reacting to your own suppressed shadows staring right back at you. Recognizing this projection is the critical first step to integrating your shadow and finally taking back control of your life.
Section 6. Psyche Map, Word Association Exercise. Okay, let's dive into something deeply practical. Our sources provided a fascinating tool, a foundational word association exercise to help you map your own unconscious architecture. Here's exactly how you do it. First, relax and focus purely on your breathing for 5 to 10 minutes to bypass your conscious filters. Then, write down the very first 8 random words that come to your mind in a row. Do not censor yourself. Breathe for 1 more minute and write down 8 more words. You now have a list of 16 raw, unfiltered words directly from your unconscious.
Next, you systematically combine them. You take word 1 and word 2 and write down the single concept those 2 words create together in your mind, and that becomes word 17. You do this for all the pairs, progressively distilling your associations down layer by layer. Eventually, all of these mental branches funnel down to one single final concept, your 35th word. This word represents the foundational architecture operating beneath your conscious mind right now. As you find some quiet time to complete this exercise, I want to leave you with a question. When you finally look at that 35th word, how much of your daily life is truly your own conscious choice, and how much is being secretly directed by the shadow you've been running from? Think on that.